Welcome back to Below the Line, highlighting the different talents, careers, and passions of the people within the film industry. We have a passion for cinema and learning all about the different types of people that go into the most collaborative art form, and teaching Hollywood hopefuls out there all of the different career opportunities that exist. Back in December, we hosted 2 panels at Los Angeles Comic-Con, and in this panel, we talk about what happens to a concept on its way to production. Moderated by Ryan Burke, our panelists tell us about their personal experiences working on blockbuster films, B-budget horror, and animation. Now, keep in mind, this was filmed during the actual convention, so in the background, you will be able to hear the ambiance of people chatting, celebrating their fandoms, and reuniting with old friends. It's all a part of the Comic-Con experience.
A concept is defined as an abstract idea, a general notion. Our panelists are uniquely qualified to speak on the subject. Storyboard artist and Emmy Award winner for the Spawn animated HBO show, Chuck Patton is well versed in the development of a concept, working on some beloved cartoons during his amazing career. Special makeup effects artist Lee Joyner has taken the concept to creature creation, taking something that only exists in script to physical form. John Lechago is a director and in the development department of Platinum Studios, taking comic book concepts and packing them for production. And you might recognize Todd Tucker as a judge of multiple seasons of Food Network's Halloween Wars. But as a skilled makeup artist, owner of Illusion Industries Incorporated, Todd has worked on a plethora of amazing projects.
This one's for Todd. You wrote Terrors of Hallows Eve, which you went on to produce and direct. Did you start with an outline? What was your process in terms of how you started and where you ended up?
Terror of Hallows Eve, it was a challenge. I was going to make a $1 million film, and I wanted to jam-pack it with all kinds of creatures and a real homage to the 1980s and everything that was Pumpkinhead and John Carpenter and all those aliens and all those great movies in that genre. And I wanted it to feel like a movie that had been made and just put on the shelf and was forgotten about and then found. So I literally, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to base it on something that happened to me when I was a kid. When I was 13 years old, I got bullied and beat up really bad by some 18-year-old kids. I made that the premise of the story and started off the story that way. And literally for the first half hour, everything you saw in the movie was exactly what happened to me at 13.
Oh, wow.
And then the night that I got beat up, I took it from there and made it so that the kid in the story, and it's 1980s, the exact same time frame, the kid in the story finds a magic pumpkin on the way home, carves it, wishes revenge, and his house is turned into a poltergeist of monsters that kills the bad guys. Clearly that didn't actually happen in the real world.
Right, real world, yeah.
But I kind of did a combination of both, and I was a little nervous because I didn't have a monster in the movie for the first half hour, and that's a big no-no when you're making a horror film.
Right.
And I was struggling. I had producers telling me, no, you got to fix this. And I went, no, I'm gonna stand by this because there's a story about a kid being, an introvert and getting bullied. And because I did that, it made it into a bunch of great festivals, Sitges in Spain and Fright Fest in London. And everyone would come up to me and say, I identified because I got bullied and I understand how that kid felt. So it helped kind of stand by my ground on that one. But it was interesting because I tend to, any movies I make that are my films, I tend to kind of take the stories of my past and just kind of weave it into something so I have a basis of a reality to pull from. But and then there's monsters galore everywhere. There's creatures. I had Doug Jones playing my lead character, the trickster. And I was very fortunate to get to make that. And the people that were involved were amazing.
See you later, bitch. Stupid assholes. I wish I could scare them all to death.
That's cool. This one's for John. You wrote your first film, Blood Gnome, and went on to write Killjoy films. What's your process of taking an idea and expanding it to a script?
I'm absolutely serious about this. Blood Gnome, I came up with the idea when I was actually shooting something else that did not work as my first film. that no one will ever see me finish. But one of my good friends from our school was slaying blood on set. We're joking, oh yeah, you're the blood moon. So that became the position of whoever was slinging blood, they became the blood moon. And we was, that's funny, that's stupid, we should make a movie. And then I said, yeah, okay, why not? It's entertaining and made me laugh right now, let's just do it. And it's kind of weird and nutty, and we shot it on DVD. And I think just not having any, being constricted in any way, it was one of the most fun things, a lot more imaginative than a lot of the movies I've worked on. But it really came up at that. And so a lot of my ideas, sometimes I will actually push the idea, say, okay, this is what I expect, but what if we did this? Wouldn't that be silly and stupid? And I was, yeah, okay, let's push it, because maybe that would be the interesting thing. And that's how I kind of went in with the Killjoy movies for Full Moon, with that in mind. Each step, I would say, well, it seems like the audience really responded to the bad guys a lot more, to the killer clowns. Let's make the next one about them. Killjoy goes to hell, and is basically on trial for actually failing to get all the victims in the first film.
Baby, how you doing?
Snookums, you won!
And then the next one, after he escapes, Killjoy Psycho Circus, let's take him up to space. Even I did not care that I had no budget for that. Basically, it's still a micro budget with Full Moon, if any of you are familiar with that. But I just said, screw it, we're going to go there because that's going to be more interesting.
They're still holding, sir. Good. Now all you have to do is find that thing's weak spot and disable it. Put you on a punch. Excellent. Weapons online. Let's give them what first.
And I get good results with that, and that's kind of how I approach things now. Even working with a much higher profile company like Platinum Studios, I will go to Scott Mr. Rosenberg and say, well, this is cool, but I think we've got to take it over here. And after a little bit of thought, he generally agrees. You really try and do things. You try and do two things. You got to kind of surprise the audience with something interesting, maybe pushing the envelope, and at the same time satisfy their expectations of the genre. Mm-hmm. But you can do both.
Mm-hmm. So that leads to the next question. This is for the group. When do you know your script is done? Like, because it's obviously you got to develop, but then you're like, that's it. We're going to execute. This is the concept. How do you make that decision and just bring it to the next step?
It's actually never done.
It's never done. So
it's never done.
Yeah. So it's like it's a living, breathing thing that keeps going.
It is. I'm in script hell right now. Not script hell. I've gone through 9 revisions of the script, and we are now at a point where the script is fantastic. We're shooting in January for this new film, and I'm now going to be doing some read-throughs with actors, and it's going to change again.
Right.
Because I have a star coming in that's going to come in and tell me what he wants to do with his part, and I'm going to have to make the adjustments to that. So literally, you're kind of, and then also too, when you get on set as a director, and if you're producing your film too, which I produce my films also, you're also making all the adjustments when all of a sudden you find out you're not going to get that location you thought you had, and now you have to adjust and change the script to fit what's going to end up happening. So my experience is until you're done with the film, that script is an ongoing breathing thing that can organically change at any time. Right. You hope you get it done before you have to lock in locations and actors, but it still continues to move and groove, at least in my experience.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I was going to say that's true, very much, and it also, I won't say not true, it's different. Like in animation, we can't afford to constantly evolve. I've had a situation recently where I went through that, and I've had scores of shows where I've had experience. Well, I learned the hard way, which is, this is where animation is much more hardline. And I found when do you know it's done? Because your schedule says you're done. Right. But that doesn't mean that you're a slave to pump out crap. But what I like about it is like you got a stopwatch that says, all right, in between where we start and where we end, we get as creative as we need to. So we hit the broad strokes. I always call it hit the broad strokes, get the whole essence of what we're supposed to do. Because we're fixed.
Right.
You only have so many time, so long to get the character drawn. You can't keep revising and revising.
You can't do pickups of Batman?
You can, but you know what? We have a running joke where it says, you know, something screws up, fix it in post. We can't all the time. I fixed many shows in post and look just as crappy as it did when we started out. But it helps to know that, again, there has to be a stoppage because there's always someone who's going to push and push and push, and then all of a sudden you're over budget. You can't deliver. We've tanked studios because they were promised to do 26 weeks to do a show, and they had the people for 26 weeks. But you know, we went to 28 weeks. They lost half their staff because their staff had already promised to go in.
Oh, wow.
Or they had to be yet in the property. Sometimes without even telling us. So you need that time period, a structure, to say we have to stop and expect trouble along the way. So that's why we gotta roll. We gotta run. Your budget is also determined on that. So we can't just say, I'm gonna get another 30 million. Or well, animation isn't that expensive.
Right.
Or it is, or it actually got more so because of CGI. That's a whole nother problem right there. And so everything has to be pre-planned. That sort of flexibility is not as flexible as people think.
Right.
We can't run out and just shoot pickups. We have to draw.
Right.
We have to create it in the computer. That takes time. That takes money. So it's good to know you got 8 weeks to come up with your genius. You got 16 weeks to do this kind of genius.
Right.
You got 26 weeks to bring this together. Expect 9 weeks out. I actually did a movie and
Before you get there, I wanted to make sure I wanted to put the two camps at odds about, because we just talked about, you know, good stories that develop in process of production, and then how you have a fixed schedule because of these production limitations or production restrictions. So I guess it leads me to the next thing where it's like, can a good concept save a bad script, and can the vice versa be true? Can a bad concept be rescued by a good script? Because these things are developing, right? Just talking about how there's two different problems.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to take away.
Well, I mean, I worked on the '98 Godzilla movie, so if you want to talk about concept and script versus what you think you're attaching yourself to. I mean, I worked with some of the most amazing designers in the history of creature design in that film. Gino Acevedo, Steve Lang, Dave Grasso, Patrick Katopoulos. I mean, Jose Fernandez. Some of you might know these people, some of you don't, but they are incredible. Didn't save the movie. Now, there was conflict with the design, which I think a lot of people weren't ready for. But it's weird how I have people still contact me today and say how much they love that movie and they love the creature. It's odd how some things you'll work on that you have no idea where it'll go. Like I worked with Guillermo del Toro on Mimic, his first American film.
Right.
And sadly that was Miramax, so the Weinsteins were involved. And just seeing the script and the storyboards that he created, and then seeing what happened after the Weinsteins got involved, and then seeing their modeling of Guillermo, not thinking American audiences would be able to relate to what he was trying to create, it became so much less than what it could have been.
A fly can look like a spider. A caterpillar can look like a snake. The Judas evolved to mimic its predator. Us.
And they came in, and it was the full-bodied bug, and one of the little producers said, hey, it looks 25% too big. I'm like, what? And we already display filter and everything, right? Your own budget, time. So I had to stay up all night to sculpt the thorax 25% smaller, have it ready for them to come back in the next day, and then go, okay, no, you guys are fine. That's sometimes you don't have as much control as you think. But in the beginning, the designs, he was very much a Lovecraftian artist, and it is today, Guillermo. The bugs were not really bugs, they were more like Baroque aliens.
Oh, wow.
And they were gorgeous. And I was brought in during the design phase with Ruben Ellingson, who just came off of Phantom Menace, and they were gorgeous, but then, again, production got involved and said it's not scary enough. So they brought in Rob Bottin, and that was awesome to get to work with Rob. And Rob and Ty spent a weekend in a hotel, and he was joking about how much a few days, got him a new Jaguar or something. And then we had a meeting on, the Monday, and Rob's there in his hippie gear and his long hair and his flip-flops. They turned the creatures from the beautifully designed, not inherently scary, but really, has anything Guillermo ever created, is it inherently scary? It's a beautiful design first, right? And then he creates the, perception that it's dangerous, but you're not. I mean, look at Pan's Labyrinth, right? The fawn. Is it good or is it bad? And it's not hard fixed into the sculpture either. So that's what he had these, and they were gorgeous. And the Weinstein said, well, we want to have as many, what's a nice way to phrase this? As many sexual orifices on that creature as possible, so we can subconsciously scare people. So Rob had to redesign it to put, I can't use words publicly, but all of these entrances and the exits and everything hidden. All throughout, I could go through individually and tell you what is what. Lots of things. And then we had to redo everything. Fortunately, we were still in the concept stage, so it was just maquettes. But with Godzilla, it was a better approach because we spent, and you'll do this on a lot of movies, you read the script, you sit down with the team, we have to R&D it. We have to work through how we're going to do this. Right. Because there's no way we can do that. And you sit down and you practice and you experiment and you sculpt and you design and you grab things. And on Godzilla, when I was brought in, it was still, again, in the very beginning stages. Jake Garber, I think, had sculpted the maquette for Patrick. Patrick had it designed, but obviously, as you know, especially back when they started with the superhero films, when things went missing, the FBI would be called, right? Because they had so much money invested in this, with the design. You don't want it to get out because you could tank your box office. So, had to get checked going in, checked going out. You couldn't take any pictures, so on and so forth, which is fairly standard with a lot of lab work. But, it's just a team of really talented people giving Patrick different direction on what the creature should be like. And it was fairly close to his original design, but we had to make, I think it was one of the last big budget creature suit films, because we sculpted a 6 scale that was in an aircraft hangar size. Then we did the creature suit for the baby Godzillas and Godzilla. And then we did small laser scan-ins where we would see mill out the large pieces to sculpt the detail. So that one, because you're dealing with such a larger budget, even though Mimic was an okay budget, you have to be pretty tight with matching what your designs are within that range of what you can do.
Right. So that,
I don't know if that answers your question.
You covered just throwing pages away. But sticking with concept, and this is I think pretty relevant to the panel here, where it's you're bridging the gap between originality and then something that has mass appeal. And how do you sort of ride that balance between, you're doing something fresh and new, and sometimes you get that opportunity, and then there's that other time where you have to be very true to what is already established, and you're in the middle of doing these concepts. So this is for everybody.
Well, I can tell you when I was doing Dead Space, based on the Dead Space game, the property was going to be a multi-platform presentation. So they already started with the comic book, and then we were coming in as the animation.
The Ishimura and the artifact must be destroyed, must be destroyed, must be destroyed.
To introduce the game, which is unusual. And the game was incredible. It was incredible. The problem was, because the game guys had never done this before, their skill development, this is interesting that you would say, okay, when do you call it quits? Because they're constantly developing. We went into it with a 52-week animation schedule, which is really healthy and good. But because our problems were with not only them coming up with the assets, but we need their assets to do this, it's like, okay, we have to tie this all in.
Right.
So show us a corridor. They're still doing development on corridor. That wall was covered with, I went onto the campus and it was insane, wonderful. They had wall of art, but they were constantly changing.
Right.
Was neon today? When I was dirty neon, we don't know if we want dirty neon. These guys gotta make a decision because I gotta go into production. So we went from 52 weeks to 26 weeks. I gotta keep my group together.
Right.
We actually had, the shows are green lit, they are literally green lit. If they're stopped, they put the red stop on it until it's green lit again. We went through 3 red lights. And it was almost like we were a bus that was trying to get down the street and got caught by the red light every time. And I just kept the crew going until finally we took their scraps that they didn't have fully developed,
Right.
but they can at least agree to,
Right.
and just do our own.
Right.
So we're using their assets from the game to make our background, which was not usually done. But we lost by that time 30 weeks. So I basically produced this movie, got it done in 8 weeks. The worst part about it, and that's going back to your first question, the script. And this is why I say no matter what, big budget, bad budget, small budget, the script isn't good. I'm not talking about great, good, it's solid. Beginning, middle, and end, no dislocation, how many actors, what, it's good enough to shoot, but also tell the story. That's great. But it's a bad script, it's a bad script.
So then, this is a very generic question, but people need to know, what makes a good script? That's a hard definition because
honestly,
everyone's got a different idea about what that is.
Because of something that I forgot, I don't know what it was said about there's so many people come in and changes and changes and changes.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's not so much that the script is good, it's the theme maintained. Because Dead Space, the whole thing about Dead Space was created by these great geniuses who all love Aliens, Event Horizon, horror haunted house movie.
I played all 3 games and I would have still have flashbacks.
It's insane.
Oh my god! So
I couldn't play games, they played it for me, they put me in a chair and they played it behind me.
Oh.
So it was like on a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
I'm screaming and and they gave me, because I'm the director, so now I can go back and tell my guys what
Right.
to do. And I did. But here's the thing, the script, and we got it, none of the things in the game were in that script. It was the most incomprehensibly idiotic.
that's confusing now. Because when I watched the thing, I was like, why did they reference? And of course, the nerd in me was like, I've got an invoice of all the missed points they could have, and they never did. And I was like, what is going on?
Well, because
now I know.
Because if the script isn't right,
Yeah.
we had to give you a rough example. It was a 125-page script for a 72-minute. That's way over line right there. Way over line. So I had to keep it going. I jumped in with the storyboard, and the writer was they were comic book writers, then making their first step into film. So they were trying to show off. What really made me angry was he didn't play the game. He didn't listen to the game. I had it played for me, but I got to interpret the emotions, what they wanted.
Right.
And the writers who claimed they did, obviously did.
Right.
So since I was supervising director, and I get to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room, myself and story editor took your script, you went out the door. And the reason I was able to do that because I got through 3/4 of the script and said, okay, when you introduce the character, the captain, you're going to do something that I've seen in a sci-fi movie thousands of times. You're going to go for the cheap and easy and have her take a zero-G ship. I didn't even read that, but it was written in the script. So they were like, we trust you, do something about it. Since I played the game, I went and played just like I'm a kid going to a movie and want to see the things I want to see. So we got the essence of the game, put it back into the script. The difference was I can't duplicate how beautiful and how crazy and how scary this game is.
Right.
But what I can do is go to a different source that they are alluding to, or at least what they're praising.
Right.
It wasn't doing. And I'm a big fan of Italian horror films.
Oh wow.
I love Mario Bava. So I said, we're gonna Mario Bava this thing. And we did. The colored blood was a visual sense that we can do. Then the game didn't. Because we had splashes of blood and alien gore.
Right.
But I wanted this to stand out so that for animation, we're pulling in the animation audience, as well as an audience who would like this and go, I know what you did, just hit a bomb with it. And that's what we did.
Nice.
I also made the rule that every time someone died, we had to find different ways to die. So we just can't just kill.
Right.
We had to up the ante.
Right.
I'm proud to say we split a woman in half in this movie. Never done a space movie. But I wanted to make it for somebody. We wanted her to die in a way you go, they won't do that, and we did it.
Yeah.
Because when I watched Dead Space the game, that's what it was doing for me.
For sure.
This was not in the script. That piece that I just told you took the place of an idiotic scene.
Right.
The writers had a cornfield in a spaceship where they had to go, and they're being chased by the monsters. They go find guns and lockers hidden in the cornfield.
Wow.
This is a spaceship the size of a city.
Yeah.
This makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Also,
Wow.
it doesn't, and again, to get away from the creative side, budgetary-wise, there's no way in hell we could do that. We can't. Just the work on just animating the corn would kill us.
Right.
And again, we only had at that time 30 weeks. So that script was basically rewritten, but we went totally visceral, totally visual. And there were times when I know we kind of blew it. We had more curse words than IMDb, so we probably went nuts with our cursing. And that was the actors taking off because
Right.
the dialogue was so flat. I just said, do it as if we're in a bar doing this.
Right.
And everybody got to curse like crazy and enjoyed it. But we also got to the essence of the story. And that's what, again, it was the essence of the story.
Mhm.
Scared the shit out of each other. How many times did a person die? How horrific can we bring this? And then kill the ending by making sure no one got out alive.
Right.
And that was not in the script. So we had to do that.
So this, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering if I could jump in right after there, because I think what you described quite well is, especially keeping the theme and understanding what the video game was you're giving the audience, the fans, what they expect, but also new and different things. You're surprising them, but living up to the expectations. Now, my experience with Platinum Studios, how I got started with them was I was introduced, and it was kind of a strange situation, but I was made to read a bunch of concepts, comic book concepts and stories, and asked how I would interpret that for film. You know, because I'm not from the comic book world, and that's actually kind of why I was taken on, and I gave them different interpretations, say, okay, this works great for a comic book, but film is a different thing. What we can do from this comic book is kind of like the same thing, which is, what is the theme? What is this comic book about? And now how can we tell a filmic story, but also give some new and interesting and some surprising elements? So just wanted to say that. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Now, what makes a script good is very, very hard to answer. I think I would want to say for anyone who's screenwriting or anyone who wants to bring a story, you really do have to think about what, again, your theme is, what is the general idea, what is the basic concept, and really focus on that. Do not try and get tricky. Do not try and make it complicated. It's like thermodynamics and entropy. The more complicated it gets, the further away you get from what the actual meaning is. Complexity happens by itself. You keep it as simple as possible and it'll be just right. And as you make a film, it does pretty much evolve from you write the screenplay, it's written then. Then when you shoot the movie, it's written a second time. When you edit a movie, if it's live action, it's again written again. You have this great opportunity to evolve it, but also great opportunity if you throw in too much complexity for it to spiral out of control. When I read scripts, the ones I love, and I've read some by some amazing screenwriters and some who haven't been produced too much, but it's just, you love reading this thing. One thing I can say from my favorite ones is that you read it in real time and it flows. And you understand, you track these themes and the characters and their emotions and what's going on very easily. You know, it keeps you emotionally, your emotional attention all the way through. to me, that's what makes a great script. It's like, I did not put this down. And it's not because it's being tricky or wordplay, fancy words, really interesting descriptions. It's when I read it, I'm no longer seeing words. The images are happening in my mind. That's when you know you have a good script.
Mm-hmm. So, this one's for Todd. Now, when you have your film, did you did you already have the vision of what your monster would be, like all the different monsters you had? Or did you find them as you were going forward and fabricating it?
Well, it's interesting because when I did my first film, it was called Monster Mud. It was kind of like a Harry and the Hendersons, like a Disney kid movie.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to figure out what this Monster Mud character was going to look like, and we were also going to merchandise it and make toys and things out of it. So we had a bunch of designs that were being done by Mike Hill and Martin Astles and Miles Tevis, and I had some amazing, amazing artists doing these designs for me. And I was directing the film, and I couldn't pick which one was going to work because they were all really, really good, and it really messed me up. So at the last minute, I ended up sculpting the dog myself.
Now we figure out how to get him back to normal.
And after the movie came out and I got away from it for a while, I looked at it again and I went, damn, I should have picked one of those because they're better than what I came up with. But I felt like it was the essence of what I just wasn't seeing it yet.
Right.
So my last film I did, The Terror of Hallows Eve, I sat down with my key artist, Martin, and I'm a good artist. Martin is an amazing artist. Like, Martin is, like, in my opinion, one of the top 10 that I've worked with personally. And I've worked with a lot of great, great artists. And I basically sat down with him and I said, on this film, I'm going to step back a little bit because I'm going to let you design this stuff because I need to stay in director mode. I'm going to have you put some stuff in front of me. And we're just going to do it like we would normally do for the studios. Just imagine I'm a studio director and we're going to go that direction.
Nice.
And by doing that, I gave him a lot of freedom and he got to do it. And it was great. So I let Martin run with it, which was helped me out as the director to have some stuff presented to me so I didn't have to come up with designs for all of this. But we sat there in my office for like 2 weeks and looked at all kinds of references and really wanted to come up with a character called the Trickster that was going to be a really interesting, potentially ongoing character. So I sometimes I'll design the stuff myself, but a lot of times, and then for feature films that come in that we're not making, for it's a studio film, depending on what the film is, I will potentially have different artists work on it, or I'll pick an artist that's specific and really, really excels in that style.
Right.
Years ago, we were doing a lot of old age makeups. We did a movie called A Dog's Journey, and I brought in Miles Tevis, who is one of the top old age makeup artists. He's a great artist, but he does a lot of great old age makeups and sculptures and stuff. So I bring in different artists depending on who I feel is going to work the best for that project.
I guess this next one's for Lee. When you have somebody come up to you and say, I need a monster, how do you deal with that? Where do you start?
Well, I mean,
you're translating what their wishes are into something that's real.
It all depends on what they already have and what they've invested in and what the script is like and when they're shooting and what their budget is. And,
how much time you have?
Yeah, time is crucial. But you have to be practical and you don't want to overbuild it or create expenses for yourself or for the budget of production that they can't handle. So you have the money and the time and the emotion of the character are the three most critical things in the beginning. You could have something technically beautiful, but if it doesn't have the emotion or the soul, I'm not going to do it.
Is there any way you could explain that a bit more?
Yeah, so if you put Kermit the Frog up on the screen, and then you put the original puppet Yoda up on the screen, and then you put Avatar up on the screen, okay? People tend to emotionally connect more to something that could be rougher or something that could be older if it's got the emotion in it. Than they would something that's beautifully designed and colored and movements beautiful. But if it doesn't have the emotion, and I feel that a lot of practical work, which I think we're going to get into in the second panel, is still king when it comes to emotion. And that has to do not just with the design, but also the lighting and the weight and the movement and the subtle reactions of the actors standing around it, and the transformation of the movement from the puppeteer to the puppet, or the creature suit, depending. So those are discussions that I'll have. And then, you know, I might do some drawings or some rough ideation sketches. I'm still traditional in that regard. I'll use 3D printing where necessary, but I prefer traditional.
Like hands-on fabrication?
Yeah, well, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm in this world just for me, not for anybody else. And that's what I get the satisfaction from, is the connection, the physical connection from my brain to whatever I'm working on.
Right.
Okay, it's the physical connection for me.
Right.
Just like you would with drawing, and you can use tablets and other things, but when it comes to sculpting, I prefer a traditional approach. But in regards to the conversation you have with the director, I've had directors look at, you know, pictures from makeups I've done in the past, and they'll say, well, I want that, and say it's an orc. It's green, it's got pointy ears, it's bald, big teeth, but I want it, you know, blue, and I want a huge forehead, and I don't want any hair, and a small mouth, and okay, we want an alien. But I want the emotion of how I felt when I first saw the picture of this makeup.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I have to interpret that,
right?
And to create that. So it was, you know, similar with Mimic and Godzilla and other movies, Star Trek. And
so this ties into, do you ever get concept blind? You've been in it for so long. You know, you were talking about emotional reaction to a prosthetic, or, you know, anything you've made. Do you ever go, I need to look away, and now I'm like, yes, I'm on target? Do you ever have to take one of those moments where you're like, have I been immersed for so long that I cannot see the concept for what it is? Or, you know, you're personally attached to what you think it is?
Well, I'll say one thing.
Because that's a hard one, right?
It's extremely tricky when a director comes in and says, I'm doing a vampire movie. They've got to look like something I've never seen before, but you have to know they're vampires. Because then how far can you go before all of a sudden the general public sees it and doesn't know that it's a vampire anymore? And the trick is, you know, everything has been done to death. So to come up with a new original design that still reads what it's supposed to be,
right?
That's the trick. But that is the trick, because right now everything has been done so many times, so many different variations, that coming up with original designs is the real trick to being able to make the next big cool thing.
Right.
You know, so it's really tricky. And I've had a lot of directors come in and tell me, it's a new werewolf. We've never seen this before. And I said, well, then are you going to know it's a werewolf when you see it? Because if it is, then you're still stuck with somebody having potentially hunched over big snout. I mean, there's a lot of things that read werewolf that if I don't go that direction, they won't know it, but you might have a cooler design.
Right.
And you might want to go that direction because you might be able to create something we haven't seen before and still put it in the world of lycanthrope, but maybe it's something a little different, so we can push the elements of cool new design. And then that's when you get things like, you know, the Predator, or, you know, I mean, when some of those designs, they were not what you...
Yeah, because that also was like, that. I remember watching a documentary that the Predator hasn't actually been fully worked out all the way up until production. Like they had even different versions of that.
My teachers were Matt Rose and Steve Wayne.
Oh, wow.
We all lived in Northern California. They moved down here and they were showing me what they were making and telling me what they were doing when they were making the Predator. They're like, yeah, it's kind of weird. It's this Rasta thing and it's really different. It's not quite what we've seen before. And I'm like, I can't wait to see it.
One ugly motherfucker.
And then when that thing came out and it did, I was a little kid losing my mind. So that's the trick now, is to come up with a design that really inspires and connects with your audience, but also has some kind of originality to it if you can push that. And the studios will stay away from that because they'll be afraid that you're going to create something that no one's going to click with.
Right.
It's not going to be the cover of Fangoria. You know, and it's tricky because sometimes the studios and directors can be their own worst enemies because they won't allow the guy that knows what they're doing to potentially give them something that could be the next cool thing.
Well, it's like, I want to gamble, but I want a sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
I had that happen with a writer on a show. He was our showrunner, story editor, and he gave us that problem where we had to do a vampire, but he didn't want the vampire things. So I'm like, well, how do you know he's a vampire? you know, which was how we had to approach this. Okay, how do you know he's a vampire? We know vampires are parasitic.
Yeah.
And we knew, and it helped that the script was leading us, but he threw that curveball. I don't want to see the teeth. I don't want to see the bat. I don't want to see this. I goes, well, and I was just one of the directors under the supervising director. A friend of mine, I'll say the name, was Spawn, the TV show. And we had to do this scene, which was really great because we went out of our way to take the obvious and try to do a spin.
Right.
And we've come up with all these creepy, weird urban monster things, but then all of a sudden here's the script saying vampire. And again, the writer who was adamant, no vampires, no sunglasses on the vampire, because he had done NYPD Blue and felt like he had done sunglasses to death. Oh no, he had done Vampire, one of the vampire games that was made into a show. So he felt like they have done a moratorium on vampires with sunglasses. So again, coming up with this prejudice of this, you can't do that, you can't do this, but it's got to be a vampire. So, and you said a key word here. Everybody has said a key word that's always helped with inspiration.
Right.
And the inspiration is, where do you go? So again, we're sitting there, okay, how do you do a damn vampire? Well, we knew it was going to be a girl. We knew that it was a misdirection in the script, that the vampire is somebody you wouldn't expect. That she wasn't the big giant European guy. She was some little girl who would go pick up people she'd come off the bus as an innocent and sucker them into the alley and kill them.
How long have you been like this?
Years. I don't like to think about that time. I wear these clothes so I can remember what I was before I had the hunger.
And she had to look like she was 16. Or it was 14 in the script, we made it 16 because we, it's very sexual oriented and we were conscious of that. But we had to break down what's the vampire. A vampire to me is a parasite. And a parasite could be anything from a mosquito, and that's what hit us, it's a mosquito. So we got away from the teeth. We gave her a stinger. Now, how did stinger come out? And we thought, well, it's got to be gross. Again, vampire to me is very oral. The whole idea of the imagery, the mythology of the vampire is horrible. So we got inspired again from Alien.
Oh,
I
wow.
remember the wonderful thing about Alien, when you first saw the monster and you opened his mouth and you saw jaws, and it's like, ugh, but then that second set of jaws came out. That's what really went, okay, I'm out of here. That's what we wanted. I like the idea of this guy picking her up. And the script was of him picks her up and he thinks he's going to brutalize her. And then she jumps him and she opens her mouth. And then we had that second pincer come out.
Oh, wow.
But we had to make the pincer be original
to
us.
Right.
So I said, again, that's what I love about what we do is that you go to that place, go outside the box, to be uncomfortable because that's what's going to elicit the emotions we want.
Right.
An Alien is a chitinous, armored. We made ours moist and disgusting.
Oh, wow.
Perfect. So when he sees it, we knew we got him because he couldn't say anything because he thought he stumped us. And we're like, no, we're artists, we're inspired. We got inspired. We gave him a vampire that wasn't a vampire, not a traditional vampire. She got to drink blood, she scared the hell out of you. And she had a pincer, she had a stinger instead of teeth. And it worked.
So next part of our concept through to production, sometimes your decisions are being influenced by what you have available. And that part is relevant specifically to talent. When talent is being brought on or when you're securing talent, how does that shape your overall concept as well? Of course, we've talked about how scripts can change in certain contexts as production goes. And other times it's locked. But then when you find out you have so-and-so or you secured so-and-so or they're interested in your project, you're now like, oh, we're going there now. So I wanted to discuss how do you manage talent or secure talent and how does that change your concept? Anyone at all?
I mean, I know everybody's worked with everybody, but I mean, the animation world is, again, we have such a variety of people and such a variety of projects, but you also, again, limited time. And it does change when you bring people in, certain people in. I'm trying to think of when, well, again, I was doing this is a Spawn movie you'll never see, unfortunately, but we're bringing in celebrity voices. And we had a character who we wanted to make our Ray Liotta character. We actually based him on Ray Liotta. We weren't going to get Ray Liotta. great was great, but Leota wouldn't do it. And so we found an actor who I thought was just wild to bring him in and give him that shot. And so, and he knocked it out of the park. He was known for cowboy roles and being a nice good guy, Bruce Boxleitner. And everyone used to just try, but he gets to play the scuzzy New Jersey cop. And Bruce just ate it up because it was like, I'm being allowed to do something. You guys asking me to act. It's like, yeah, you get to bring a character in. And he got to be this disgusting bastard. He out Ray Leone. It didn't change our lines, but it changed our perception. And it helped us get a stronger character. Because again, what I loved about him was he was so out the box, and changed the design too, because we got to see less of them. We started to bring in things that we saw Bruce do.
Right.
And he was even telling us, I even had a hangover last night, so I don't have to clean my voice up. He was like, yeah, keep it growing. And that was that inspiration again. So we built the character, we built it with the new actor.
That concludes our concept to production panel at the Los Angeles Comic-Con. If you want to hear more of our convention panels, our panel Practical Effects is available for you to watch now. We have some really, really exciting public events coming up and some really great interviews that are going to come out. So you don't miss anything, be sure to like and subscribe.